Welcome to episode 9 of Prosper by Design, where real people bring real questions about how to live, create, communicate, and make money in alignment with their human design. I'm your host, Chris Prochaska. I help entrepreneurs, corporate teams, and speakers see how they're uniquely designed to profit with purpose in a way that's natural and authentic to their design, both as an individual leader and as part of a company or organization. You see, everything is energy, and we communicate energetically first and foremost. Your human design is a map of your energy. It shows how you think, experience emotions, interact with others, make decisions, live your purpose, share your ideas, market yourself, and even make money. My guest today is a manifesting generator, or express builder in business terms. And like myself, Amy is a trained psychotherapist who also does coaching. We discuss using the design chart as a diagnostic tool, nature versus nurture when it comes to developing beliefs and fears as a kid, and how understanding your design can help transform those fears. So grab your own human design chart and follow along. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone, I'm so excited for today's episode. And as you saw, we've changed it, the name of it from Living by Design to Prosper by Design, because so much of what we're doing here, and most of the people that come on here do have a business or are in business for themselves or working with someone in leadership or management. And it's really about prospering on all levels, not just making money. And so we're going to be talking today with Amy Turner. Let me introduce you. I'm so excited. So Amy Turner is known as the No BS sweetheart. I love that. And most recently, her clients are referring to her as Amy Turner. Love it. Because when you're around her, you just get aha after aha. So she's got tons of credentials: licensed marriage and family therapist, and licensed advanced alcohol and drug counselor, certified hypnotherapist, blah, blah, blah. Sounds a lot like my resume, tons of certifications and all licenses. But really, I know that you really get this, is that, most people don't really care about the credentials. It's just, can you deliver? And obviously you do. So you deliver great results for your clients. And let's just look at your design a little bit today and see, how you could deliver even more, just how that's working. Welcome. So glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here, Chris. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see what we're going to uncover even more today.
Yeah. So when you say even more, for those of you who don't know, Amy and I did, she had a really awesome online summit, and I was a guest on that summit, and we looked at your design in that one also. And we talked a lot about emotional intelligence. And so tell me a little bit, because that was probably 6 weeks ago that we did that. What impact did that piece have? And I'm just going to share my screen so everybody can see your design while we're talking. And then that way I know what we're talking about. So we were talking about this emotional intelligence function. What did you get out of that? I'd love to hear.
Oh my gosh, so much. I got that it's okay that I'm not an emotional person, because people would say, like, I have a poker face, and they like look at me and like, how are you a therapist? How are you not crying? Like different things like that. And by you sharing this with me, Chris, about my human design, it was like, oh no, okay, I take in people's energy, but I'm not the one I think we talked about the wave. Like, I'm not the one that physically like shows my emotions, but I take in people's energy. And because of that, it's like when people are around me, they're okay to have their emotions, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, that's really true, is that you have this very objective way of helping people with their emotions. And I had another guest a couple of weeks ago, Matt, who also has a very similar design in that is completely open, just like yours. And he too, is sort of, people will say, God, you're so cold. Why don't you care more? It's like, but you do feel things deeply. You do have emotions. It's just that not always is it going to be shown. Either that, or you'll take it in and amplify it so much that you're off the rails going, where did that come from?
Right.
Right. So, and it's interesting too, and I just want to say this sort of for our listeners and for, it's always a great reminder for myself too, is that, part of there's no bad design, right? Like there's no design that we're like, ooh, God, that sucks, it sucks to be you. There's inherent challenges and inherent gifts in every single design. So one of the things to really be aware of is that when we have, oh God, how do I want to put this? So one of the gifts that you have is your objectivity around emotions, is your ability to stand back and be objective about the emotions and not get pulled in, not get swept away. And that is part of your gift as a therapist, as a healer. So
Oh, definitely.
yeah. And I get that whole thing of, sometimes it feels a little bit like we should be feeling things more deeply, or we should be jumping in the pool with our clients. I remember I used to work at the University of Washington. I used to work with people who are self-harming and suicidal. And one of the things that the woman who ran the whole clinic, I remember her saying, she goes, Chris, above all, never jump in the pool with the client. If the client is drowning, never jump in the pool with them. And I think that that's something that we are able to do when we have this emotion center undefined or completely open like you do. So cool. All right. So tell me a little bit about what else you're up to besides doing the online summit. And what are you creating? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so right now I think it's 3 years in, and I feel like I finally found my niche. So,
Tell me about
which,
that.
yeah, so I want to help people who are people pleasers, because I was a people pleaser for so many years, and it was like making myself a chameleon and just doing everything that I thought people would want from me and not knowing what I want and who I was. And so that's what I'm realizing. It's like, oh my gosh, I've done so much work on myself. That's who I can help. That's who I really feel called to help. And so right now I'm creating like a 4-month course for people that are people pleasing. And my big belief is it starts in childhood. It starts with our parents and how they treat us. And so I love combining hypnotherapy to help people find the root cause of this people pleasing and why it started and why they don't know what they want, why they don't have their identity. So that's what I'm working on, and I'm really excited about it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's interesting I love that you brought this up, because I think this is a really awesome conversation to have. So again, you and I both have our master's degree in psychology. We both are clinically trained. And this is one of the things that I love about design, and also looking at the intersection between our nature versus nurture, right? So what you were just bringing up is the nurture part of it. What is our experience as we're growing up? How were we parented? What was the context that we were living in? What were the experiences that we have? What were the traumas, capital T traumas, little t traumas, that we experienced, and how did that create the beliefs and worldview that we have, and our emotional, experience of the world. And then we have the design, which in a lot of ways is quote unquote the mechanical part of it. It's if we look at our design as like the vehicle for how we maneuver through life, and it's an imprint from birth. There's sort of mechanical issues, positive ones, right? It can be a gift, and you're going to see this in just a second, but it can also be our greatest challenge because it colors the way that we perceive the world. So this is how, do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have one older sister.
Yeah. So your sister and her experience of your parents and you and your experience of your parents, even though you have the same parents, are going to be different. And the way your parents parented both of you is going to be slightly different. Even though we've tried to be consistent along the way, we communicate energetically first and foremost. And so our designs interact with one another, and we we're going to literally push each other's buttons in a different way, right? Like you pushed your mom and dad's buttons in a different way than your sister did, and your sister and you push each other's buttons in a different way too. And you support one another in different ways too, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we look at when we're looking at how do we prosper in our design, how do we profit specifically in our design, is to look at some of the places where our greatest shadows are. And typically in shadow work, it's sort of like, okay, we got to look at the shadows that you can't see, because you got to clear those so that you can move forward in your life, right? And then when we're talking about it in terms of design, one of the places that we look at when we're looking at how people prosper and how they profit in their design is to look specifically at the shadows, because that's where you have your greatest wisdom.
Wow.
And you have, and just what you were saying, I work with people pleasers because in childhood, right, there's this root cause, the identity, and you have a lot of wisdom about that. You also have a design that's going to predispose you in some ways to experiencing and being a people pleaser without realizing it. So one of the ways that is here in the 19, I'll just use my little fun little pointer here, and the 19 down here is this trait has a want to be wanted and a need to be needed. I mean,
Mm.
in a lot of ways, it drives your behavior, right? Because this function right here, we call it it's the root, but we also, in business terms, we call it drive and stamina. It's the drive, right? That drives you, and it's a pressure center, a pressure to take action. And because you have it undefined, there's a lot of pressure there from the outside for you to behave in a certain way, and that 19 is going to color that in a large way. It's also part of your grounding force. It's the earth in your design. So this is a big part of who you are in the world and why you do that. So I'm going to pause there and just see what's coming up for you around that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's so true because you said like the want to be wanted, need to be needed. And like my biggest mission in this world that I've come up with and I'm still playing with is like everyone wants to be seen and be heard. So that's my thing, is be seen, be heard, because that's what I wanted so badly. And those are the people that I attract, is they want to be seen and heard so badly, but they feel guilty and they don't feel like they're enough to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they can't figure out why, right? It's like,
Mhm.
why? And here's what I really want you to get to, like that want to be wanted and the need to be needed. It sounds bad, right? Like it kind of sounds like, oh, how needy, that person, right? That's not it, right? There's actually gift in that as well, because when you are in that place of experiencing what that's like, you shine. Like there's gifts in that you have to offer the world. But if you're in the shadow of it, it will come out in a way that doesn't support you, right? I mean, that's really it. It doesn't necessarily support, and it's a place for you to learn and to grow and expand and discover yourself and what that's like. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my gosh. Just like building my business on the days where I'm tired and don't want to do anything, then it is like I'm in my shadow. But when I'm okay, I'm going to do a Facebook Live and I'm going to teach about this, then I'm like lit up. And that's what my boyfriend always says. He's like, you get on camera and you just light up. So that is such a shadow, which I didn't even see it like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's but you've learned a lot. Like, that's the thing I really want you to get. You've learned what it's like to live your life in the shadow of this, and where it works and where it doesn't work. What it feels like, what it, at a very deep visceral level, what it feels like, and it points towards the emotions. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, what does it feel like how does that emotionally pull you towards things or people or experiences? And also, what does it feel like when you don't have that, when you're not seen, when you're not heard, when you're not recognized? So you have a deep wisdom about that. And then you also, on the other hand, have the clinical tools to back that up, to help people. And it's something that you'll probably always experience or bump up against at differing levels, because that just bring that, it's like it doesn't, I say that, and sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to keep experiencing that. And it's sort of like, yeah, but if you get that there's nothing to fix, it's just that whole, like, that ascending spiral of illumination and exploration of who we are and our evolution, that you're going to get deeper and deeper insights, as you're ascending in your healing process. And you're going to, as you consciously go, oh my God, yeah, this is something that I know about, I can teach about, I can really help people with, then it becomes easier and easier. Right?
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I think is really interesting is that this one is the 40, and the 40 is all, we call it deliverance, and it's all about, I have this one also, and it's a big part of my design, and it's this over giving. It's this, and especially in an undefined willpower or heart, willpower function or heart center, and undefined, right? Not colored in. Most of humanity has this tiny little triangle right here, white, undefined, majority of us. It has a lot to, it's our ego, and it has a lot to do with our sense of self-worth. And so when most of us are grappling with this sense of, we have to prove ourselves, we have to prove that we're worthy, we have to prove that we're enough, and yet we have nothing to prove. Like, with that undefined, those of us who have that undefined, we came into this lifetime nothing to prove. That's not what our life is about. And yet, because it's shadow, it's what most people grapple with. It's what drives the self-help and the healing industry, is there must be something wrong with me. I got to fix it, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I felt that calling as a kid. I knew I would be going into the healing arts in some way, shape, or form, but it drove and continues to drive a lot of why I study what I study. Would you say that's true for you as well?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I felt like I wasn't good enough. I didn't fit in my whole entire life. And that's what drove me to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So the 40 in this undefined willpower function is, it's like, you'll deliver. Oh, you'll do it. Whatever you promise that you're going to do, you'll do it. But the question is, at what cost? And the cost is usually against you, usually against you, whether that's undercharging. And this is true for everyone. So I really want everyone who's listening to really get this. Like, this is not, I mean, I have grappled with this pricing, with the value. Like, doesn't everybody know this? Maybe nobody needs this. Like, wow, and yet you go to Barnes and Noble, or you go to Amazon, or you go anywhere, and you just look at the self-help psychology aisle. I mean, there's millions of books out there. There is so much online. Like, it's redonkulous, right? Like, how much is out there, and there's a reason, because most people are grappling with this. So there's this, is what I offer enough? Is does it matter? And there's this often the sense of like, I got to prove it. And so then we overgive, over deliver, over promise. And yet, because you have the 40, you'll do that, but then you're like, oh shit, I gotta deliver. And so you will bust you'll stay up for 3 days straight if you had to, just to make sure that you deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on. And I know that feeling because it drives us in a lot of ways. So I'm just going to pause there and check in with you and see, what's popping for you.
Oh my gosh, Chris, you like hit it on the head. That's exactly what I'm grappling with right now. It's like I'll get on the phone with people and I hear their story and I tell them my investment and it's just too much. And I'm like, okay, how can I make this work? What can we do? What can we trade? Because it's like I care so much. And then there's the other piece of it where it's like someone does invest with me and then they don't have the most like amazing aha session like I thought they were, and then I'll give them another session because I really want them to feel like it was worth it, and it's driving me crazy.
Yes. Oh God, I so get this. And everybody who's listening, there's two things. Because I think that, most of the people I believe that are listening, at least at this point, are healers and coaches themselves, therapists, coaches, healers in that industry, or some sort of consultant who, we are offering a service that is our genius, our gift, and we're, making a promise, right? Like if people are going to invest with us, they're going to get something out of that. And we really are doing our very best, right? To be consistent, saying, this is what I can offer, and we offer it. And there's that, oh my God, is it going to land, and all that. Then there's those of us, and we've all been there too, because we have invested ourselves in coaching, in therapy, in some sort of program to better ourselves or our marketing or whatever the hell it is, just list anything, right? And there's this whole thing, this whole, God, what do I want to say? The thing that we grapple with is responsibility. Whose responsibility is it? Whose responsibility is it? When we deliver, is it our responsibility to make sure they get it as the person who's purchasing it? Is it our responsibility to take action? Yes and yes, and yet we can only deliver what we can deliver. And if the person isn't willing or unable or whatever to receive it, right? This is such a big discussion. Oh my God, this is something that I talk about with my colleagues often and have grappled with a lot myself. You also have the 50 in your design, which I do too. And that has a lot to do with a fear of responsibility, and not knowing really whose responsibility is it, and grappling with this, like, is it mine? Is it theirs? God, what the, does that make sense?
Oh, complete sense. And I take on, like, I over responsible, like, I don't know what the word is, but I'm over responsible with it. And it's like, if people don't get the crazy aha, then I'm like, oh, they felt like it didn't work, and now they're not happy with me, and they're not going to like me. That's kind of a little bit of the people pleaser still coming
Sure.
out.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is something as a much bigger conversation than we'll cover today. But like, I think it's important there's what's cool about this, right? Is that this is something like these are the things that as healers, as coaches, as consultants, as therapists, as providers, this is our work. This is for us to sort out in our process. And it's not an easy question. It's not an easy sort of fix, if you will, or I don't know if fix is the right word, but an easy sort of like, oh, well, this is just, here are the rules, and you just follow the rules. And it's sort of like, yeah, but wait a minute. And also to look at in the design that there are reasons why you will grapple with this, right? Like there, it's in there. It's part of the fear, right? Like the fear is of taking responsibility, or fear of responsibility, and not really being sure of who's responsible for what, you know? And then you couple that with some people pleasing, and you couple that with some, or triple that with some, over delivering type of like, I got to get this, I got to make sure. And suddenly you can see, oh, wait a minute, it makes perfect sense that I would be grappling with these things. It's actually part of my design. And here's what's so beautiful about it. It doesn't have to be a deal breaker. In fact, it's not a deal breaker at all. I say it's the lock that locks you in place, and it's the key that unlocks you. It's the lock that locks you into this matrix of beliefs, and it's the key that can open that lock and set you free. And so you can do some work. You have hypnotherapy, you have tools, you have all of these great things, and you can do some deeper exploration, not to get rid of it, but to deepen your understanding of it. We are transformed, and we are free through the design, not in spite of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That just gives so much more freedom, instead of like feeling, oh, I'm trapped, I'm always going to feel like this fear of responsibility. But it's so true. It's like a shadow piece. And the more we understand it, the more we can, it's almost like loving it, like, like
Yes.
self-acceptance and self-love. It's like loving that shadow part of your human design to understand it.
Exactly. And it'll come up, like it'll come up and go, oh, there you are. Oh, that's one of my design challenges. I kind of have this funny analogy. The way I think about it is, or like, if this is our vehicle, it's sort of like when you're in the car and you're driving, and there's somebody in the back seat and they want to roll the window down, and you're like, oh yeah, never mind that, like, that it's stuck right there. It doesn't roll down all the way or whatever. It's a little janky thing back there, and you just kind of go, oh yeah, that's that thing. And here's the click, here's how to, here's the trick to get around that, right? And so, or here's the duct tape, just, tape that back up. And it's not, it's something to kind of have fun with, right? It doesn't mean you have a lemon. It doesn't mean your vehicle is totally screwed and you can't drive. It just means it's sort of like, oh yeah, that's that little hitch in the giddy up back there. That's the little thing that, oh yeah, that's okay. It's not and yet there are times when that becomes everything, right? Like the window doesn't go up or down, and rain's coming in, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, that's what I got to deal with right now. But it's not a deal breaker. The car is still moving, it's still working. It's like having a little bit lighter touch with it, a little less like, oh my God, everything, this is like everything, and more a little bit like, oh yeah. Does that help a little to see it?
Yeah, especially on the different phone calls, and really like connecting with people and wanting them to work with me, and then like discounting myself. I mean, it's just like, Amy, instead of discounting yourself, just, this is part of your design, this is something to accept, and you still got to value yourself and value your services.
Exactly. And that takes a level of presence and practice that is and here's what's so cool, right? Like your practice, your experience, your work around that directly influences and results as a transmission in the world, because this is exactly what your clients are grappling with. They're grappling with it in a different area of their life, but this is what they're grappling with at a very deep level. And so as you stand in that, and you're like, I get, like, this is part of what I'm here to work on with people. It's part of what I'm here to work on for myself. And it's part of what I'm here to do with other people. I got this shit, right? Like, I got it, I am, I'm doing that. And when every day that you do a little bit more, you are bring a little more presence and a little more awareness to it and a little more power for yourself in it, that translates, that transmits. And then you start to see that our work in the world isn't so much about what we do with our clients or what we say, it's the energy that we bring. It's the transmission that we be as we hold space for, oh, I know what it feels like to want to be wanted and need to be needed. I know the behavioral patterns there. I know what it means to devalue and try to prove and try to overgive. I know what it means to take responsibility for everybody else and not really sure what I'm supposed to be responsible for. I know that place. I can help you with that place. Like there's I can feel it, like my whole body's tingling. It's like you know?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's so fascinating. And it's funny because I just came up with that. Oh, I really know I can help people pleasers. And now everything's just coming to fruition.
Yeah.
And with my chart, with my human design, no wonder.
Yeah, exactly. And so here's a couple things about that, right? Our design does us. We don't do our design. We don't, it's not like a personality that we put on, even though here it says personality. It's really just saying, this is what is conscious. It's sort of on the outside that we can see. The design right here is our unconscious. This is the map of our unconscious world, what we're not aware of. And yet it's the foundation of who we be, right? Our design does us. It's the filter and the vehicle. It's a filter through which you see. It's the vehicle that drives you. And our job is to sit back and sort of work with it and let it drive. It's going to, the more we resist, the harder it is. And it's what's so interesting about this is that as soon as I say that, I can almost hear and feel, because I've been in this place too, is where it's like, what about free will? Well, I don't, I'm not surrendering to that. Like, I have choice. And I'm like, yeah, it's a choiceless choice, right? I'm an existentialist, right? So there's this, it's like freedom. What is freedom really? And when we were studying in grad school, the existentialists, it was just like, we have these ideas about the concepts of freedom and choice and all of that. And yet, if you really look underneath, there's, anyway, I could wax moronic about that. But to stay right here is that your design does you. So it was sort of inevitable that you would at some point come to this. The cool thing is that now that you have that, and there's, I do the profit potential coaching with people, and there's a lot more to it. Like I'm just taking like 3 little tiny pieces right here and saying, this is what's popping when you describe what you're coming to and what you're creating and what clarity you have now. There's more layers to that. When I'm working with my clients ongoing of like, okay, how do you work with the shadows, and what other aspects and exactly what are the things that your clients are grappling with beyond those major points? How do you serve them? All of those things come in, and we can look at those but deeper, but you really see like, this is part of your fractal. We call it your fractal, right? We live in a holographic universe, and we're fractals of the whole. And on our fractal line, there's a mark. You said something in your application. You're like, how do I stand out in this really crowded marketplace? And every single one of my clients grapples with that. I have too. And when you really get like, there's a fractal line that is it's specific to you and your design. Like, you're going to start seeing people, the more consciousness you bring to this, the more you just tell stories about it, because you're a natural storyteller. The more you tell the stories around these aspects, the more your fractal line, those people that are specifically energetically attuned to hearing you and nobody else, they will find you. And it's like, it's in that it's in the snapshot, I call it the quantum energetic profit map, which is your design. Like, you understand that, and then they start to come. The reason I say this is that I finished the coaching training for that like 6 or 7 months ago, and I just started practicing it. Before I was like really, it was so brand new. There's only like less than 30 people who have this training in the whole world, and I'm like, this is pretty new. I want to make sure that it really works. That's part of my design. And so I started watching the people that are showing up, and they have it's like, oh, it's eerie actually. Like, every person that keeps showing up, I'm like, holy crap, that's really weird. Like, how there's parts of their design, even yours, that are part of mine that I'm here to work with. It's all right there. I don't have to come. I mean, the avatar, all that stuff, like, yeah, we can do all of that, but it's really, a lot of it's in your design.
Wow. That is fascinating. So because you understand human design, you can look at all of these people's human design that's coming and seeing, oh, they're in my fractal. Like, that's amazing.
So now I'm like, oh, this works. Like, this is like eerie. I wasn't even consciously trying. I just wanted to see what would happen. And it's really wild. So the point is that you're like, this is pretty new. Like, this is just like gelling for me. I invite you to just take these 3 pieces that we talked about today, knowing that there's like 10 more pieces, right? But if you really get, like, if you just explore these places for yourself and start writing about them and telling stories and putting it in your marketing, your people are going to show up, and you'll be like, holy crap, what the hell? And it's not about, it's that whole thing of like, make your mess your message. That's like kind of this, like, I get that. In a way, someone might say, well, that's just making your mess your message, and so that whole thing about making your mess your message is that in a lot of ways, the clients who come to, like, there's this, the clients, and I'm curious to hear what your experience of this is, does it make sense to you that it's sort of like, could I really talk about that? Is that enough? Like, should I? So it's like that mess. We're like, oh, I'm clear what my mess is, but is that valid? Is it enough? Do I really know enough? What will people think of me? Are there other people that experience that? Like, do you see what I mean? I think there's like this, like, we get it as a concept, but when we start to look at it at the level of design, it's like, oh my God, it's not so much your mess. It's like, it's part of who you be. It's part of what your purpose is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny too, because you said that I'm a natural storyteller, and I don't think I am. So that must be something else where I'm discounting myself, where it's the whole, like, are people going to listen? And do I know my mess? And do I know my mess? Like, and I bet it's also me not realizing I'm a natural storyteller too.
Exactly. When I was writing my book a few years ago, this was, it was like 7 years ago. I always wanted to be a storyteller. I always was fascinated by people who could tell stories. I was always like, oh my God, I remember a woman who came to my elementary school, and she sat down, and all of us kids sat around her at her feet on the floor, and she started telling stories, and she didn't have a book. She was just telling stories. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? Like, I want to do that, and but I just thought, I can't do that, whatever, and I just sort of set it aside. And then when it came to being a speaker, I was like, oh, I'd love to be a speaker, but I couldn't do that. I used to turn like 5 shades of purple, and I had a fear of speaking. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. And yet I kept feeling called to it. So I'm curious, do you feel called to it. Like it's something where you're like, oh, I could never do that. But it's actually, you feel drawn to it. Storytelling.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So when I was writing my book, I was about halfway through and I was like, I don't know. What am I doing? This is just BS. Like, this is crap, whatever. Like all my shadow is coming up. And I had my first human design analysis. I was introduced to it. And I'll never forget because he looked at my design and he said, you're a natural storyteller. I was like, what? And you, not only, I have this one too, the 33. There's two storytelling gates, the 56 and the 33, and you have the 33. I have both of them, but it doesn't matter because one is potent enough and it is your conscious sun. It is your brand. It's how you show up in the world. It is part of your purpose is to tell story. And that's what you do. That's how you transform. So whether you're doing a hypnotherapy session, which is really just telling a new story, right? Whether you're writing, doing Facebook Lives, blogs, whatever, it's story. And I will never forget, as soon as he said that to me, now yours is conscious, mine was unconscious, all of those storytelling gates from your unconscious. So it was sort of like, I kind of was attracted to it, but I couldn't figure out why, it wasn't conscious to me. And so as soon as he said that, he was like, you're a natural storyteller. I was like, oh, okay. And I just finished the book just like that. Like I never looked back. I never looked back about being a speaker. I never looked back about being a writer. I just owned it and started moving forward. So I invite you to consider, my friend, that as a natural storyteller, you can simply from this day forward just go, that's who I am. That's actually part of what I do in the world.
Okay. It scares me, but I love it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And yet, if you really just let it sit there, you'll realize, oh, that's actually easier for me to do than anything else.
Wow. Mind blown. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then it might be looking at what are the fears that come up around telling the stories, or what are the what other constructs do you have about what it means to be a storyteller? Like, oh, you have to use proper grammar, or you have to be very eloquent, or you have to have something to say, whatever. I mean, just whatever it is, or I can't tell people that because what will they think of me? All of that crap. And which is just, that's what it is, right? Or over responsibility. What if I tell a story and I, and I out someone, and I shouldn't be saying whatever. Like there's ways around that, change identifying information. Like, as therapists, we're highly attuned to the confidentiality of our clients. And that, I think, is something that is kind of interesting in the coaching world, that the level of confidentiality in the coaching world is very different than the level of confidentiality in the therapy world. They are very divergent. And so I know for myself, as I move from being a therapist into being a coach, grappling with that and the responsibility and the values and all of that, that's a huge piece of why people come to us, because we will hold all of those things in confidence. And so to go out and storytell is, right, they don't go together. Or getting testimonials on your website, or having people share, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense, because that's what I grappled with when I switched over. It's like, I can have people's names. I can have testimonials.
Yeah.
What?
I know. People who are coaches are like, of course, you just do that. And it's like, really? I mean, yeah, we have to unlearn a lot of things when we move from being a therapist into being a coach. There's just, and yet you're never gonna, well, I'll speak for, I can't, I still am always holding that, right? Like I'm still always holding that. I actually did a podcast interview with someone early on, and we talked about some stuff that was really deep for her. And she was like, I don't think I can share that. I was like, no problem, done and done. Delete the episode. It was gone, because I really got like that. If she felt too exposed, it's like, it's not going to happen, So you're
Yeah.
going to be sensitive to that. And so there's also, anyway, I'm kind of going off the rails there, but yeah. So I feel like that would be just a place to, for right now, land and invite you to just play with that and play with these pieces of your design. And like I said, there's more ways to work with it, but I find that in bite-sized pieces, like this is big, those 3 pieces, right? And storytelling and what that means to you. Like that's enough for you to work on for a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions, thoughts, ahas? Like, how has this been for you?
Yeah, this was amazing because it's like it gave me permission to be me. And I know I said that with when you did my summit too. It was like Chris gives you permission to be you, and that's exactly how this was. It's like, oh, instead of beating myself up about the over responsibility and the over giving and the people pleasing, it's just no, like I love how you shared that, and I'm probably butchering the words, but your design does you, or you said something like that. And
Yeah,
I
that's exactly it. Yeah.
yeah. And I love that because it's like, oh, instead of beating yourself up and like, why can't I get this? It's just, oh, this is your shadow. Just accept it, work with it, and then everything's gonna open up. And with the storytelling and everything, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm just gonna embrace all of this and just go with it. It's my design.
Exactly. And here's the thing. So, and this is for everybody. Everybody's listening, and you too, Amy, and even for myself. Don't take my word for it. Just experiment. Try it. And it will reveal itself to you. There's nothing to believe here. This isn't about like believing something. This is about, well, I mean, it is about like if it resonates and you're like, wow, it's like try it on. And just what happens is that it's easier to be you than it is to not be you. And so if you start to find it's easier and you're in flow, then you're on the right track. Right. And it doesn't mean though that you're not probably going to grapple with a few things about storytelling. Remember, those are the beliefs that and you have the tools for that, right? Like this is what you help other people. Although I find that I go to my people, right? I hire my coaches and my people too, because I can't see those things. Like it's sort of like, where is that thing? I can't find it, right? Because we have blind spots to ourselves. And so that's part of the process. But you'll know it's true because for you, your gut will go, that feels right. And then it feels true to your identity. It feels true to who you are. And if that's the case, then play with it, experiment it, step into it, embody it, and watch what happens.
Yeah, I'm feeling tingly all over. This is so good and so informative, and I can't wait to start playing with this.
Awesome. The tingles are always a good sign.
Yes.
Right on. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for being a guest with me today. And it's always fun to talk with you, and I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait to see your stories and hear your stories and what you have to share as you really deepen into this people pleasing. You have so much to share. You're already doing it. You're perfectly designed for this work, and just believe that, like step into that and own it, claim it. That's really the next step. Just like I did as a writer, it was like, oh, I'm a storyteller. Okay. It's like, oh, I'm a storyteller. Oh, this is what I'm here to do. Okay. Like, you don't need to like go, are you sure? One more thing. Do I have to do one more program to figure it out? It's like, that's a lot. You said earlier, I give people permission. That's so true. Like, it's just like a little, I think I need to get a new stamp. It just says validated,
Yes.
thou has permission to be thyself and go ahead and mock at the shit out of it. Like you have fun with it. It's so, yeah, it's awesome.
I love that. Thank you so much. This was so good, Chris.
Yay, yay, yay. All right, my dear. We will we'll be in touch. I want to hear how you're doing and get some updates from you in a couple weeks, okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Prosper by Design. Head over to chrisprochaska.com and check out the resources I have for you to expand your energy intelligence, boost your creative potential, and profit with purpose, all in alignment with your design. Remember to choose goals that are worthy of you and your natural energetic design. It's a hell of a lot more fun to live and make money that way than trying to be someone you're not. You've got a genius that can only come through you. Wouldn't now be a good time to share it? I'll see you in the next show, and don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Until next time, take care.